everyone, this is PKO Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have, for a change in direction, we're going to do a fun video looking at who I believe were the most hottest and most attractive looking movie actresses of the 1990s. Now, this is all in good taste. Everything that will show on here is safe for work, so no worries here. There's no kind of risk images or commentary provided within this breakdown. But for me, this is just a look back who I deem were really the most attractive and also the most prolific actresses within that time period. So the criteria that we're going to use on here, that this is a movie actress who is going to have a consistent amount of substantial film roles and a notable lead or supporting role. So this would exclude a lot of famous TV actresses that I know many would actually put on this list in terms of who was the most attractive actress within the 1990s. So in particular, I look at the first choice that I know everybody would pick in a list like this, and that would be Jennifer Aniston from Friends, or Sarah Michelle Gellar from Buffy, Lucy Lawless from Xena, or Jerry Ryan from Star Trek Voyager. Those are kind of the four examples that I'm pretty sure everybody would put maybe even at the top of the list in a breakdown like this. But because all of those were television actresses, they were not movie actresses. You know, some of them only became movie actresses later on, maybe in early 2000s, so that's why I've excluded them from this list. But if this video is popular and people would like to see me do a list similar to this one for television actresses from the 1990s, then by all means let me know in the comments and I'll provide a list, and I'm pretty sure all of those four actresses will feature heavily within that breakdown as well. Please also hit those like and subscribe buttons to help me grow this channel and provide you with more high quality content as well. I will leave all links to my Instagram profiles as well within the description. But I just think this is going to be a fun look at who I believe were the most hottest and successful actresses within the 1990s. So as well as how they look and present themselves in the image, I will also consider the film roles that they were in and how profile or how prolific they were within that time period. So here we go with this countdown. So the first actress I'm going to put on this list is Meg Ryan. Now, Meg Ryan, she always had that nice, pretty, very cute smile. She's very light-hearted in most of her movies. She primarily centered on romantic comedies, but I think towards the end of the 90s, she centered a lot more on more serious, more challenging roles. But if we look particularly, you know, she emerged on the scene with When Harry Met Sally with Billy Crystal in 1989, and then she really came to prominence with Tom Hanks in Sleepless in Seattle in 1993, and that was really, I think, one of the biggest roles that everybody recognised Meg Ryan. I think that's quite a decent to good film overall. She did reconnect later on with Tom Hanks in You've Got Mail, and I believe that was in 1998, and both of those films were really successful. So those films really established Meg Ryan as a romantic actress. But if you look as well, you know, she starred with Denzel Washington in the excellent Courage Under Fire. I think that's a very good, very powerful and compelling movie, and I think Meg Ryan did very well. She was also good in The Doors, if you remember, in 1991 with Val Kilmer. I always liked that film. I think that was a vivid representation, in particularly of Jim Morrison and the band as well. And I thought Meg Ryan did very well in that role as well. She was also very good alongside Andy Garcia in When a Man Loves a Woman, and that's when she was kind of much more of a alcoholic counsellor, and Andy Garcia's character had to cope with trying to bring her back to some sort of normalcy, and Meg Ryan did very well in that role. So it was those roles that really she was kind of extending her brand and taking on more challenging performances. So yeah, Meg Ryan I thought just very well, just very sweet natured, very pretty as well, and I think a good actress for that time period within the 1990s. We go on to the next choice, and that is Winona Ryder. You know, very beautiful, very softly spoken, notable actress. You know, she came to prominence, I think, in the 90s, if you remember, with Edward Scissorhands with Johnny Depp, directed by Tim Burton. I like that film very much. You know, she's the kind of love interest within that film. She's got the blonde hair, very pretty looking on here. I thought she did very well. She actually did also a good performance in Bram Stoker's Dracula. If you remember, that was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and she played alongside Gary Oldman for the most of that role, and also Keanu Reeves. But I think she was more successful in the scenes with Gary Oldman. She was, of course, the long lost love that Dracula was lusting after, and yeah, I think she did very well throughout that role. She also had Little Women, which I think overall was a decent film, and later on within the 90s she starred in Girl Interrupted, which is of course the film that garnered Angelina Jolie her Oscar as well. So yeah, I've always looked Winona Ryder. I think this was really the early to mid 90s was her most successful time as an actress. I think later on she kind of veered away from the public eye, and she didn't really get a lot of substantial roles after that. You know, she did come back later on in the 90s with the likes of Star Trek, and she was also in Alien Resurrection way back. But yeah, I think early to mid 90s, that was when she was really most successful. But I've always liked her. She's got a nice, pretty smile, very much of a sweetheart princess look about her. So yeah, I think Winona Ryder did very well, and I think she was quite prolific in the early 1990s as well. The next actress on this list is Gwyneth Paltrow, and she's always had this stunning, attractive look about her. You know, she had that small appearance, if you remember, in Seven, most notably, you know, the development towards the end of that climax of that movie. I won't spoil it, just in case anybody hasn't seen it. But really, she came to real prominence in 1998. She had a string of numerous roles, particularly in Sliding Doors with John Hannah. That was a very successful movie for her, and she played the lead role. I think she kind of had twin narratives. There was this story of what would happen if she got on a train and if she missed the train, and you would follow the parallel timelines of how her life would follow, and I think she did very well in that film. She also had A Perfect Murder with Michael Douglas, and that was very good as well. You know, it was typical Michael Douglas. He's this kind of ruthless businessman, and I think it was how Gwyneth Paltrow was trying to plot to murder him and how he would find out. So she did very well, but that's a very good suspenseful kind of film. And also, most notably, of course, you had Shakespeare in Love in the same year, for which she won an Oscar for Best Actress. So this was really the most prolific time within her career, and she kind of disappeared a bit, I think, in the early 90s before coming back, as we all know, and now most prominently as Pepper Potts in the MCU movies. But I think the early to mid, very much to the late 90s was when Gwyneth Paltrow was most successful, and I think, yeah, she's a very good actress. Even now, I mean, I think she's in her late 40s, she still looks very stunning, got that blonde, very nice smile about her, so I think she looks very good. So yeah, another notable entry, I think, for Gwyneth Paltrow within this list. The next entry, I think a lot of people would include, and that is Salma Hayek. You know, the very fiery, sultry Mexican actress, one of the most stunning actresses, I think, within the 1990s, and even now, if you look at her, I think she's coming close to her 50s, and she still looks stunningly hot and sexy throughout. And yeah, I think in the 1990s, we all remember, of course, when she really came to prominence in Desperado with Antonio Banderas. That's when she really got noticed. You know, she made that stunning appearance. You know, she's got that hot kind of Latina look about her. I think a lot of people noticed her throughout that movie, but she was also in the likes of From Dusk Till Dawn. That, of course, starred, of course, George Clooney, and that was produced by Tarantino, and I believe directed by Robert Rodriguez again, I believe. You know, and she starred as well in the Wild Wild West with Will Smith as well. So in the 90s, she came to prominence, and obviously she's been able to stay prolific post the 90s as well. That was when she was really, I think, at her most famous in terms of her profile. We all know Salma Hayek, how gorgeous looking she was back then, and even now she still looks great. So yeah, that's why I think it was a notable list. Many people may put her a lot higher on this list, but yeah, definitely I think Salma Hayek, yeah, just wow, she just looked amazing on here. So the next entry on this list that we have is Cameron Diaz, and I think in the 1990s, for me, she was one of the most stunning, amazing women in terms of movies that I'd ever seen. I can vividly remember when I went to the cinema to watch The Mask, if you remember, that was starring Jim Carrey. That was a sort of kind of superhero comedy in 1994, and I think whoever watched that movie and you saw the debut scene of Cameron Diaz when she came forward, I think she's in that red dress, she just looked impeccably stunning and sexy throughout. And yeah, I really think when I first saw this film, I thought it was one of the most stunning women alive that I'd ever seen. So yeah, I thought at this point she was going to become a really dominant actress within the early part of the 90s. Now, she did have a similar role in My Friend's Best Wedding with Julia Roberts, and I actually feel they underplayed Cameron Diaz in that film. I actually feel they kind of lessened her presence and lessened her look, you know, just to be more in favour of Julia Roberts, who admittedly in terms of profile was probably one of the most successful actresses within the 1990s, and I really feel they undercut Cameron Diaz in that movie. But she did come to prominence later on in the Farrelly Brothers film, of course, There's Something About Mary, you know, starring alongside Ben Stiller. That was a massive hit within the late 90s, and that really, I think, showed a lot of people that Cameron Diaz could be a leading actress as well. And she also starred later on in Any Given Sunday in 1999, with directed by Oliver Stone, starring Al Pacino and Jamie Foxx, and I think she did very well in that role as well. So that's when she was really kind of becoming much more of a serious actress. She also starred in Being John Malkovich as well in 1999. I've got mixed feelings on that movie overall, but again, that was another aspect of Cameron Diaz trying to present herself more as a more credible actress, and she was able to carry that success through certainly on in the early part of the 2000s. But I think, you know, in 1994, if you want to talk about who was one of the most, you know, sexiest and most attractive actresses, no doubt about it, Cameron Diaz would come at the top of this list. We don't go on to the next entry, and I think for a lot of people this is somebody who they might even consider to be the most hottest and attractive actress within the 1990s, and that is Sandra Bullock. You know, I first noticed her, and I'm sure we all did, in a couple of those action classics within the early 90s, and that was both Demolition Man and Speed. Of course, in Demolition Man she played Colonel Huxley alongside Sylvester Stallone, and she had that famous look for me when she's in the kind of police uniform outfit. She's got those really kind of knee-high boots and those tight trousers, and she's doing all the roundhouse and martial art moves, and yeah, she just looks so beautiful and so hot in that movie, and she played it very well. It was much more of a comedic performance in that role. And then of course we followed on later on, her profile raised even higher in Speed, starring alongside Keanu Reeves, still one of the greatest action movies of the 1990s. And again, she plays very well, much more of that love interest, that bubbly, kind of bright, very smiley character and personality about her, and that's what propelled her, I think, to become much more of a leading actress. So if we look further on, she had the looks of While You Were Sleeping and The Net and A Time to Kill, and that was really showing her at the forefront as one of the major leading actresses of the 1990s. You know, she still had some big hits, you know, after the 90s, particularly in the early to mid 2000s. You know, she did win an Oscar for The Blind Side, and of course she had The Gravity as well. So she was very popular later on, but I think still the 90s was the most prolific of her career. She later on, of course, had The Heat with Melissa McCarthy as well, but certainly the 1990s I think was the most prolific part of Sandra Bullock's career. It's certainly one of the most of the 1990s, and like I said, she just had that great smile and just that warming, appealing personality, and that's what I think really pulled her to the forefront. You know, she wasn't sexualized as such in the 1990s, but I think she was just very pretty, very happy-go-lucky personality, and that's why I think a lot of people liked her within the 1990s. So yeah, without doubt, Sandra Bullock, if you're doing any list like this, she would come to the forefront and be at one of the major top hitters at the top of this list as well. We then come on to the next entry on this list, and for many, they might feel that this is the most prolific and successful actress within this 1990s, and that is Demi Moore. And yeah, for me, many people would put this woman at the number one in terms of sexuality and attractiveness, and yeah, I would find it hard to argue, and we can't deny that certainly by the mid-90s, Demi Moore was one of the most successful actresses within the 1990s. You know, you look at all of the films that she's had throughout this period, these were major blockbusting hits. You know, we look at Ghost in 1990, which was one of the most successful movies of that year. I actually think it was the highest grossing movie. It grossed over 500 million, and yeah, she was part of that trio of great performances alongside Patrick Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg, of course. She then later on had Indecent Proposal, where she played alongside Robert Redford and Woody Harrelson as well, and that was another major hit. You know, it had that hook of, you know, if someone offered you $1 million to sleep with your wife, would you actually do it? And I actually thought Demi Moore played very well, and she had a very substantial performance throughout that role. She later on, of course, in that same year starred alongside Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson in the very iconic A Few Good Men, you know, the lawyer courtroom drama of the same year. You know, again, a very good supporting role from her, maybe not looking at her absolute best in that kind of uniform lawyer outfit that she had throughout the most of the movie, but you know, very good performance as well. And then of course her profile rose even higher in Disclosure in 1994, starring alongside Michael Douglas. This was, of course, if you like, the reverse scenario, or what if a man was claiming sexual abuse against a woman. And also it majorly helped that you had Demi Moore, and I think this is where she looked her most like sexy and the most hot looking, attractive as well. You know, she had that long flowing hair, she had that curvy figure, and she was able to play a very aggressive and very intimidating personality, and that's what I think made the movie. You know, if you're going to play that scenario, it always helps if you have the woman who's able to be a lot more intimidating and a lot more imposing. So I think physically she was very imposing as well as very personality as well. You know, you have that very iconic scene where we have the kind of sexual predatory where she abuses Michael Douglas. It's a very hot scene, and Demi Moore just looks amazing. I also noticed the scene as well when she's doing the cross trainer as well, and I think this is the hottest that Demi Moore has ever looked on here. So that was a very successful role. And then she did later on have Striptease in 1996, and that was very notable because she got paid allegedly 12.5 million, which is at the time one of the highest ever salaries for a Hollywood actress at the time. And I think when she looks back on that role now, I think that was probably a mistake, but again, you can't deny she looked very hot in that as well. And she would have later on a very good role, I think, in G.I. Jane, directed by Tony Scott, I believe. But now I think was a very good movie. Again, trying to be more of a novelty approach, so in a woman trying to rise up through the ranks within the military, and I thought Demi Moore performed in that role very well as well. So that was really the highest collection of movies that Demi Moore had, and certainly by the mid-90s she was, you know, amongst the hottest, if not the most successful actress within the 1990s. And yeah, she just, I think, just has that very stunning, very beautiful, very innocent look, but she was able to play these really tough, aggressive characters, certainly if you look throughout the later part of her career as well. Now, she wasn't very successful post the 1990s, but still, I think she was great looking throughout. And like I said, if many people wanted to put Demi Moore at the top of this list, I would find it very difficult to argue with them. She just had that stunning, like, dark brunette kind of hairstyle, just great figure, just great personality, very beautiful, and she starred in one of the, you know, some of the biggest films within the 1990s. So no doubt about it, Demi Moore was one of the most hottest and most prolific actresses within the 1990s. Now we come on to the number one entry on this list, and to be honest, I think if you ask many people, men or women, looking back at the 1990s, who was the sexiest, hottest actress within the 1990s, I'm pretty sure a lot of us would say this woman's name, and that's got to be Sharon Stone. You know, without question, for me, I think the sexiest, hottest, most attractive actress within the 1990s. She was extremely prolific, extremely successful throughout all of her career, I think, within the 1990s, and it's, you know, it's very hard to deny, I think, the fact that Sharon Stone is number one on her list. You know, if we go through the period in particular, we look really at first Total Recall, and I think it's underrated of how good she is in that movie. You know, she's the supporting role, she's the assumedly fake wife of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Douglas Quaid, and he's struggling to find his memory, of course, and we have further adventures in Mars. And Sharon Stone looks amazing on here. You know, every shot, you know, she had that, you know, very famous scene where she's fighting with him, she's in her kind of gym workout gear and she's throwing all the roundhouse kicks, and later on we see her in a suit as she's chasing Quaid and Melina in Mars, and Sharon Stone looks amazing on it. You know, she just got that really kind of slim, very fit, very finesse kind of feminine figure about her. She looks amazing. She's got this really kind of angular face, really piercing eyes, and stunning looks about her. And of course, we have to mention a role that really brought her to major international stardom a couple years later, and that was, of course, in Basic Instinct, the very erotic thriller from Paul Verhoeven, starring alongside Michael Douglas. And this is really where she was that femme fatale, and there's very lot of twists and turns about Basic Instinct. And yes, growing up in the 90s, I was one of many men very curious and, you know, very interested to watch this movie, you know, for the obvious reasons. But yeah, but Sharon Stone, this is really her role. It's her performance that drives this movie. You know, she's mysterious, she's threatening, she's kind of that dangerously sexy performances, you know, very similar to what we saw with Michelle Pfeiffer in, you know, Batman Returns. And yeah, she's just really commanding role, and it really brought her to the forefront, I think, of the 1990s as one of the leading actresses. You know, she had more substantial roles later on. She had Sliver in the following year in 1993. I think that's a very average role overall, but still, you know, she got a very high salary for that role. She starred later on that in 1994 in The Specialist alongside Sylvester Stallone and James Woods as well. And again, she looks amazing in that, you know, very fabulous looking throughout on here. You know, that's a very good role for her, starring alongside Stallone, who was still very hot within the early to mid 90s. She came to prominence once again in Martin Scorsese's Casino in 1996. For me, this might be Scorsese's still greatest ever masterpiece. It's one of the best gangster films, and not only one of the best gangster films, it's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. It's an incredible movie, a 3-hour masterpiece. Starring alongside Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, she holds her own in this movie, and I think this is where everybody looked at Sharon Stone, and she impressed a lot of people because, yeah, you can't deny that prior to this movie, everybody looked at her more as a sex symbol. You know, she's starring in all these very intense, erotic kind of films, but Casino is really where Sharon Stone proved to a lot of us that she could act, and she's incredible as Ginger. I mean, she looks stunning in this role, and she really acts, you know, incredible, I think, and very intense. You know, particularly if you look at the later stages of that movie where we see Ginger kind of go off the rails, and she's very, you know, wayward and reckless and all over the place. And yeah, she really gives it a all. She really throws all of her weight into that performance. And, you know, by 1995, 1996, Sharon Stone, I think, was prolifically, you know, the hottest kind of actress within the 1990s. And certainly for me, the most sexy looking, the most attractive. I think it'd be very much hard for people to deny that. For me, to end this breakdown and this listing, you know, the number one, I think, most hottest actress within the 1990s for me was Sharon Stone. Let me know what you think in the comments. Who for you was the most attractive and sexy looking actress within the 1990s in terms of movie roles, as I mentioned before, not television roles. And as I mentioned again, if you really like this listing, if this video it proves to be very popular and you'd like to see me do more listings like this, let me know in the comments, and if need be, I will do a breakdown of the television actresses who I believe were the most attractive television actresses of the 1990s, and we can have a further debate as well. So as I mentioned before, please hit those like and subscribe buttons and help me grow more content for you in the future. But that's it for now on my breakdown who I think were the most hottest actresses of the 1990s. That's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.